You're not going to find a community such as the indigenous people that honor their veterans so highly, that have sacrificed their time to go overseas in some cases. In some cases, just to go down the road to stand up for our families and fresh water. We honor that. We honor that integrity that it takes to do that work in a good way and to come back to our families and communities in the best way. Throughout Indian country, our indigenous peoples have ceremonies when there was a war. There were ceremonies to get our people off in a good way. And there was also ceremonies to bring them back in a good way. Some communities would do a cedar bath, gives you some cedar leaves and bathe our warriors. So whatever they've seen on those battlefields, whatever they've seen out there, they wouldn't bring those back to them. What we talk about today in the post-traumatic stress syndrome, our people know the importance of that, to be trauma-informed in the work that we do. It's ingrained in who we are as indigenous people. Now, all veterans are interested to make sure all veterans come on out and come out here and dance. Dance for your people. Dance for your community. Let's give our veterans a big chimi glitch out there and a big round of applause, a big thank you for their service and sacrifice for my family and your family. All right. All right, Regent Director Leah asks everyone to come out and shake the hand of our veterans. Come on out and shake the hand of our veterans. You're invited. Come out here and give them a personal chimi glitch. Bring the little ones up there. Come on out. If you have relatives currently serving in the military, currently out there, come out here and dance for them. Come out and shake hands and say chimi glitch. And as you're dancing out there, think of your relatives. Maybe you had relatives that are no longer here that served in World War II, in Korea, in Vietnam, in Desert Storm, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Come on here and dance for them in a good way. So the veterans, come on out, don't be shy, they're in the dress here and getting you out there. Dance for those relatives out there, looking good, looking good. That's your style out there.
Can't go? Do this to clear out
Hi, good morning, afternoon, wherever you're located. Welcome, all my relations. I'm Bernice UP Jordan. I am a citizen of the Fort Peck Sioux Nation, Public Health Program Manager for United South and Eastern Tribes. So welcome to this echo session of reclaiming. Next slide. So just a couple of participation tips that we have to say prior to getting started. We are building a community. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Select everyone and let your fellow participants know your name, tribal affiliation, job title, and organization. Everyone must be muted until the audience feedback portion of the hour. And then use your raise my hand icon on Zoom, and we will immediately unmute you for your reflection. You will receive a link to the recording and presentation by the end of the week. Next slide. So we are providing continuing education information credits for this session. We work with Cardia Services to provide those. We have heard all your comments and appreciation for providing these Cardia education, continuing education credits. So these are something that we are very proud that we're able to accomplish during these sessions. Next slide. Upon successful completion of this activity, you will be awarded one contact hour. Your certificate will be sent via email. If you have any questions about the CE activity, contact Michelle Dougherty at mdougherty@cardiaservices.org, or our phone number is 206-729-4775. Next slide. Disclosures. There are no relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies for those involved with the ability to control the content of this activity. Next slide. Oh, and the last thing, you are on Indigenous land. We like to, give that land acknowledgement to recognize everybody throughout the United States or in the other countries that we do have participation with. That we provide this map to learn and acknowledge what tribal nation land you are on. You can go ahead and download this QR code or go to this website. This map does not represent or intend to represent official or legal boundaries of any Indigenous nations. So this is as close as we can help with the acknowledgement of the land you are on. Next slide. All right, so we are getting ready to get started with this session. I am going to go ahead and introduce Holly Echohawk, who will be the lead SME to get this echo started. All right, it's all yours, Holly.
Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. Really wonderful to see where you all are from that's on today and the diverse tribal communities that you represent. Once again, I like to remind us all that we created this Reclaiming Native Psychological Brilliance for you, in appreciation for the work that you do in your community. And this hour, we bring you the best and the brightest in Native behavioral health. And everything we do is focused from the perspective and assumption that all Native people are brilliant. We're born brilliant. It's in our genetic history. And we think that if you start from the assumption when you're working with any Native family, any Native individual, and have the great honor of doing so, if you start with the assumption that the person in front of you is brilliant, that sets the tone for your interactions forward from that. So, but we did create this for you. This is your time out, your special hour. You can turn off your phone. You can move away from any distractions and just sit back and relax and enjoy the information that will be shared with you today. So today, if you were with us last month, you will remember that Dr. Jackie Vorpal, a Choctaw tribal psychologist, shared some overview information about the home base program, which is a partnership between the Boston Red Sox Foundation and Massachusetts General Hospital. And Jackie provided a really great overview of the Native, the support for Native veterans, and she went into detail about the unified protocol. You all might remember that, and a little history of how they developed this work and her role in that. Today, bonus, now we have the actual team, the clinical team from home base with us today, and they're going to share some more information about the home base project and the support for veterans and Native veterans. So we'll turn it over to them, and we're really pleased to have the home base team with us, and they'll introduce themselves. Lewis?
Thank you, Holly. Incredibly grateful for this opportunity to share more about our organization. I'm a civilian Chinese American psychologist. I help support a few things at home base, but what brings me here today in my work with my colleagues is supporting the build out of programs in communities that have had incredible legacies of service, but have not had equitable access to care and resources. So I will pass it along to my colleagues, Laura, then Marcus.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be with you all today. My name is Laura Harward. I'm non-native. I'm very grateful to be here with you all. I'm a clinical social worker. I've been with the home-based program for about 9 years now, and I'm the director of our intensive clinical program. So my work, I oversee a lot of the building and iterations that we do of our intensive clinical program, and also the clinical operations day to day as well. So lovely to be with you, and I will pass it to Marcus.
Marcus, you there? Uh-oh. Okay, so as he rejoins us, I will not speak for him. I could not do him justice. What we'll do is we'll start just here with maybe this photo, which is maybe a loud and notable moment. But what we want to do is to make sure we can also describe the quiet moments that came before this, as well as where we're headed. But we were ever so humbled and grateful to have Rear Admiral Michael Wiaki, Dr. Rose Wiaki, both of whom have had leadership positions within Indian Health Services and also Urban Indian Health Program, as well as the Honorable Peter McDonald during a opening ceremony before a game in Fenway. So how did this happen? Well, we'll tell a little bit about that story as we move through. Am I able to control this? Or if we could advance. Great, thank you. And let me see if Marcus has rejoined us.
I'm here, Lewis. Can you hear me?
Yes. We gave introductions, so if you want to jump right in, Marcus, please.
Sure, thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. Of course, at the final hour, my laptop overheated and shut down. So I apologize. Good afternoon. My name is Marcus Dale. I am the Regional Associate Director for Home Base Arizona. I'm also in charge of programming for our Arizona-based home-based programming, but also regional Southwest and tribal relations. I am Dene. So for my relatives that are maybe on the call, I'll introduce myself in our language. So Marcus Dale and Purachini and Shan Kiani Bahashin Ado. So thank you, everyone, for this opportunity, and so happy to be here. Join you. Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you, Marcus. For our agenda today, we're going to kind of carry on from the wonderful foundation that Jackie set last month. Actually, Jackie, you're here, right?
Yes.
Yes, I'm right here.
Oh, yeah. If you wanted to say a word in case folks weren't able to join in last month.
Oh, well, I'm Jackie Vorpal. I'm from the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And Lewis, Laura, and Marcus brought me in to help with the program and bringing in some culturally sensitive information and adapting UP for the Native veterans and their families.
We are ever so grateful for her support here. What we'll do today is kind of carry forward and talk about the origins of our program, as well as the National Intensive Clinical Program, the actual development and some initial results of the Native veteran cohort that we ran and will continue to run, and then where we go from here. So let's try to, nope, still can't control it. Sorry, Lee, to make you do this. If you could advance the slide. Great. So how did we come to be? So on this video, it's muted, but there's some text here and some visuals that kind of tell the story more eloquently than words can. So after the Red Sox won the World Series in '04, the tradition is that during the spring, the winning team will go to DC and do basically a photo op. And a part of that is going to Walter Reed. And I believe it's frozen here. So in '05 in spring, the leadership and the ownership group and the players went for what was supposed to be really just a quick photo op. And as you can see here, they were fully committed and actually stayed for hours. And so they returned kind of the opportunity for some of the service members to join them in Fenway. And then you'll see that in '07, after winning another World Series, that in '08, they went back. And so what was happening in the backdrop of this time is that there was more research that was being done about the injuries that service members were coming home with. And it was around this time when the term invisible wounds was coined. And so there was a lot that was percolating kind of in the ether with the ownership group and how they can actually help support the development of services that our service members needed when they returned home to be able to re-engage fully with their families and in their communities. And so they had a conversation, they had a lot of meetings in Congress, but also more locally, and developed a partnership with Mass General Hospital to actually provide services for service members and their families, all at no cost. And so the program opened its doors in 2009. So I'll just pause for a moment. Oh, no, sorry, you can keep playing it, Lee. One of the ways that we support building awareness, but also raising funds, is to be able to have a signature run, which is where we saw Rear Admiral Wiyaki, Dr. Wiyaki, and Honorable McDonald. That raises awareness, but also provides us funding so that we can continue to break down any barriers to care that exists. And so if we look at the next slide, just generally the brief statement here just encapsulate that our mission is to heal the invisible wounds. And there's a few components here that are really important that we'll get to in the following slide, but there's really 4 core areas: clinical care, wellness, education, and research that have been a part of our organization since '09 and have continued to grow with us and stayed true over the last years. If you look to the next slide, so one of the things that was really important is that when this program started is that we added value and bridged some of the gaps that existed in care. And so you'll see here for number 1 that the program serves service members from all eras, regardless of their discharge status. So they can have an other than honorable. We also don't use the same definitions for veteran status as they do federally. We are very quick to make sure that if somebody has put on a uniform and has an invisible wound, that we will be opening doors for care. We also make sure that our commitment is to the whole family. So the saying here is that when one person serves, the entire family serves. As mentioned earlier, our funding efforts allow us to make sure that no services come at cost for our patients or for their families. And a big part of our team is comprised of service members from all branches, male and female, in different MOSs, so different jobs, so that there can be a warm entry into care, which can be quite challenging when we're thinking about the landscape of the private sector, where a lot of the frontline providers are civilians. And we've been really fortunate because we're embedded within the hospital that we have faculty members from not just Mass General's Department of Psychiatry, but we pull from the best in different areas, including Spalding for physical medicine and rehabilitation. So if we can advance the slide. And one of the core programs that we have here, I'll hand off to Laura as she helps lead our national efforts in the intensive clinical program.
Thanks, Lewis. So as Lewis mentioned, ever since 2009, when we first opened, we've been able to provide outpatient care to those who lived within the state of Massachusetts. So about 8 or 9 years ago, we really wanted to think in an innovative way, and in a way that maybe hadn't been done before, of how can we reach the people that don't live in Massachusetts, or that maybe don't have access to regular care, or they have other barriers to care, meaning, jobs, childcare, and such. And so we developed, in partnership with some other programs through Wounded Warrior Project, we developed what we call the ICP, or the Intensive Clinical Program, that first launched in 2015. At the time, it was very small. We only saw about 6 patients in a cohort once a month. And since then, it has just grown and grown and grown to align with how big of a need we see that there is. So this program, like all of our programs, is at no cost at all to any veteran or service member. What's really exciting about this program is how much it just reduces any and all barriers to care in line with our mission. So in addition to not being at any cost to people, we ensure that when they're here, they're getting actually nearly 2 years worth of care compressed into the 2 weeks. And that's really something that, to our knowledge, hadn't been done before, to have such an accelerated path of care for somebody who's struggling with things like PTSD, TBI, anxiety, depression, substance use. So where we are today is actually every 2 weeks year round, we bring in 24 veterans and service members, and we run 2 cohorts of 12 at a time. It is very intensive, as the name suggests. In order to get 2 years worth of care compressed into 2 weeks, they're pretty much at our clinic all day, every day. They get care that's really been proven to work for trauma and other invisible wounds. We also take a very holistic, multidisciplinary approach. So about half of people's day is dedicated to different types of group therapies and skills groups. And then the other half of the day is very customized and very individual. We review people very carefully before they get here to ensure that we're matching them up with the best possible treatment. So everybody meets with an individual therapist daily who can focus in with them on their trauma or cognitive concerns. Everybody also has a case manager. Usually that's the person that actually works with them long before they get here. And then while they're here from day one, we're working with them on aftercare considerations as well. We also have an embedded VA liaison to ensure that we're able to help people get connected with care at the VA, help them with benefits questions. And then we also have a nursing team available to everybody because we know a lot of these people struggle with pain and other chronic physical issues. We pretty much start and end every day with some kind of movement or wellness-oriented activity, usually fitness, yoga, art therapy, nutrition. Now, what we started to do a couple of years ago is wonder, can we take this 2-week program and really target it towards specific groups of people? Because a lot of people, it's very challenging to say, yes, I need help. And so potentially going through this program alongside other people who are actually have gone through similar experiences to you, maybe even more so than just being a veteran or service member, we have found to be really useful. So by that, I mean, we've begun running cohorts specifically for women. We also run cohorts for families of the fallen, who have family members who have lost a military loved one to suicide. We run cohorts specifically for special operators. And what we saw is people succeeded just as much when they were in these cohorts, and it reduced even further some of those barriers that we keep mentioning, because it continued to normalize seeking care when you're from one of these very specialized groups. We can go to the next slide, please. So maybe the biggest question that we get is, does this actually work, right? Does it work to put 2 years worth of care into 2 weeks? And the answer is that it does. So what we see with our program is that people get the same amount of success, meaning symptom reduction, as they would in regular outpatient therapy. So a lot of people that come to see us are starting with moderate to severe diagnoses of things like PTSD, depression, anxiety, and they're leaving at a mild level, or often not even meeting criteria anymore. It's not shown here, but that we do have data on is that people maintain this benefit for years after they leave the program as well. The key difference compared to regular, weekly outpatient therapy, in weekly outpatient therapy, there's a lot of success rates. However, only about 50% of people complete the program. In our program, since inception, we've had a 95% completion rate. So we really attribute that to a couple of different factors. One, that we try to make it as easy as possible to actually get here in terms of it being no cost, but we also provide additional financial assistance to people for childcare, pet care, covering lost wages at work. But also the cohort effect that we were alluding to, the idea of going through this program alongside other people who no one's had the exact same experience, but who have similarities, who you don't have to explain yourself to, who speak a very similar language that you do. So that's where we attribute a lot of our success to. We can go to the next slide. I'll turn it over to Holly.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate, and I'm sure our audience appreciates, the history of how this all came to be, and so appreciate the background about the Boston Red Sox winning the World Series. Yay. That the different years that they did, and the White House visits from the team, and then the World Series team also going to Walter Reed. So it sounds like the initial interest and heartfelt desire to help came from growing awareness of the physical harm that has been endured by veterans in combat. And then it switched to, over time, it seems that it switched more to helping veterans with emotional rebalancing. And the reason that we have this photo, which is a great photo of probably veterans, probably the majority of people in this photo are veterans, because you all know that Native American people have one of the highest rates of joining the military in the US, and a very high rate of Native veterans. But this picture is just such a great picture of the camaraderie among veterans, the culture of, and the sound of the drum. And also science now shows that the rhythmic motion and sound connects to brain science and helps to level out, de-escalate, and bring pride and a source of stability. So, but thank you for what you shared so far. I'm leaning in to hear the rest.
Thanks, Holly. I am going to turn it over now to Marcus, I believe, as we advance to the next slide.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Holly. As Holly had mentioned, yes, Native Americans do volunteer for military service at a higher rate than any other ethnicity group in the United States. We're very proud of that. And a lot of times I think that we get asked the question as to why do we serve? And I think many of us know here, land's very important, and protection of land. This is our homes, and we have to, we respect it and all its resources and how it provides for us in our communities. And so this is very important. We also know that, one of the questions I get a lot of times when I'm in the field and I'm speaking about why I put together an all Native American ICP for veterans, a lot of times I get the question mostly from non-natives. And, that last bullet point, Native cohort allows veterans to focus on healing. And that's very important. when we started this journey and introducing me into the team and joining the team is really because, as many of us know on this call, when we are in a high population of non-natives and you're the only one, you become an educator, right? You immediately get all the questions about what do you feel about mascots, all the pop culture questions that are going on about policy and about infrastructure. And one of the major goals of when my involvement in developing this is, let's make an environment for healing. Let's not talk about, all those things and all those questions that we're always receiving all the time, but let's just focus on healing. And so that was one of the very important things that we kept kind of a thread, through everything that we built for this cohort. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand it off to Lewis to talk about kind of how the beginning, and then I'll come back in. Lewis?
Thanks, Marcus. So as Holly and Marcus mentioned, the rates of service are greater than any other racial ethnic group. And yet what we found was that in 2020, when we looked at folks we had reached in our national programs, while we had done well with some communities, we had really failed in doing what we were able to in reaching Native veterans. And so in 2020, as we started this journey, we kind of adopted an approach that we hear a lot, even as civilians within home base, the crawl, walk, run approach, where in the first phase, as much as we wanted to rush to address gaps and to provide service, we needed to first pause to listen, to learn, and to understand if we had a value add that we could bring to a community. So there were a lot of different opportunities to show up and participate, from tribal symposiums to conferences to actually attending Reclaiming Native Psychological Brilliance series. And then in 2022, we wanted to also contribute. So there were some offerings of identifying service members for health professionals that we could offer. We wanted to make sure people knew about our 2-week program that Laura had mentioned, and let people know also that we are learning to develop new programs. But if you can't wait for care, come and join us now. And then all of this, as we were listening and learning, we understood the importance also of needing to have representation in our program building. And it was a key factor for us that before we could really successfully build this program, we needed to make sure we had the right leaders on the ground who could guide us. And so in 2023, we were so incredibly fortunate to actually be able to hire Marcus as our lead in the Southwest, but also to help us broadly with program development in programming. So I'll hand it off to Marcus.
Thank you, Lewis. And so when I joined the team about over a year ago here, one of the most important aspects was, and going back to what I talked about a little bit earlier, was we are really, really well. We do a great job at with our treatment and our care and our clinical programming from our case managers, social workers, our outreach team. Everyone has a part of this program. I was able to monitor, see, witness, experience the graduations, and talking about developing. Okay, they're leaning on, well, what do we do next? What are the next steps? And I've worked with other groups before in developing programs for, things that have been, more specifically for natives. And so one of the forefront things I said was, you do this so well. You have such high success rates in treating our veterans and their families. Don't stray from that. You're not here to be, traditional healers. You're not here to, so, let's get in subject matter experts that are working, other folks like myself who have experience in working with tribal communities, but also those who are in this space. So we connected with Jackie, we've connected with the Lifelines in Boston, which is an urban Indian health provider. We've connected with health administrators like Admiral Ryaki and Dr. Ryaki and folks who are in tribal affairs, who have relationships at the tribal leadership level and decision making. So we built this team around helping fill in knowledge gaps to a team that does working with veterans so well, and then we just added on to this knowledge on that. So next slide, please. So that led us into some of our first cohort in our pilot program, and this is the structure that we began with, is a 1-week model of those, and we have talked about, wellness program, family support persons, telecommunications inequities and barriers for working with those who live in rural areas, and some of those barriers that exist not only just in communications, but also in distance to access to transportation to even get to New England. We talked about some of the anxieties that some veterans may have in traveling, and can we alleviate some of those. And then we talked about some of those tribal components that veterans are practices, cultural traditions and practices. And so one of the anxieties was like, I want to bring my medicine pouch, but how do I do that? I'm not sure about, nervous about bringing it through TSA. So again, because we had this roundtable and we're able to connect with all these folks that, work with natives in our communities, Lifelines was able to provide medicine bundles for those who would like to have, some elements of healing from home, but didn't want to travel with them. So we had that ready. We connected with the local tribes, and we connected with an elder from one of the tribes in Massachusetts that was able to bless, the week, the healing week, and also to invite us as visitors into the community and into the lands that we're going to be living in basically for this next 7 days. And so and we did the same thing with the closing ceremonies, and we finished with a blessing, things that we are used to, very intertribal. So we're mindful that we're not going to be able to accommodate everyone, but we're all used to being intertribal in our different community settings. And so I'm very thankful with that. Next slide, please. Here's a photo that we took. I think this was at the end, right? Was this at the graduation or at the beginning? This was the beginning, at the beginning of ours. So there is Jonathan Perry, who did the blessing for us, and then Jackie, myself, Nicole from Native Lifelines from Boston, which is the urban, and then Laura over there. And this is from a photo we taken right after, I think, our dinner, or we finished up our first evening there. What we did on the first night is we had everyone come in on that Sunday evening. People were arriving over the weekend, and so we opened up with the blessing. We did introductions, very important to understand where everyone was coming from, and then we broke bread together and we all had dinner. And so it was a wonderful time of learning about each other. So next slide, please. Some of the considerations, the support and considerations we did, myself and along with Jackie, and then working with Nicole, we wanted to make sure that we wanted to give assurance to the team in Boston, to the home-based clinicians and everyone there, that we were there and available to fill in knowledge gaps in working with Indigenous communities. And so through all of our collective thought and this, this round table that we had, we were able to, make sure that we were mindful of everything. I was there from as soon as they landed. I was there at Logan as all the veterans and their families were coming in. And then, kind of us escorted them over to the hotel. And I was there the entire week. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a social worker or case manager, I'm really there for the relationship and the liaisoning. So if there was anything that any veteran or family support member needed to share but wasn't sure who to share that with, I was there to be able to receive that information and be able to connect him to the appropriate person if needed to, otherwise, or just there to receive comments. And I will be there again coming in our future programming as well. Of that. Again, biggest thing was, don't try to be traditional healers. When I was in the field, one of the things that an elder was telling me was, we've been doing our methods of healing for thousands of years and our ceremonies. And I said, I understand that, we're not trying to replace anything. We all have our own respective ways of healing by the ways we were taught and the way we were growing up. So we're not trying to replace any of that. What we are is like a supplemental, like, in a sense, we're the alternative medicine, right? to how we can heal. And so that was I wanted to make sure everyone was okay. We'll handle the questions and we'll make sure that we are able to fill in those areas of need, of questions and comments concerning traditional cultural, our ways of healing versus Western medicines and Western practices of healing for invisible wounds of war. Next slide. We had two cohorts. We had cohort A. Cohort A was from Hawaii through our connections with the Wounded Warrior Care Network. We were able to serve 6 Vietnam veterans and 1 family member who are Indigenous Hawaiians or native to Hawaii. And the next slide. Our Native American from represented the tribes that you see listed there here in the Southwest all the way across to New England and even as far north as Idaho as well. So we had 12 mixed era veterans with 9 support family members. And so they were able to all be able to participate fully and engage fully with everybody from the program that entire week. And so we were very honored to have them come. Next slide. Laura will talk about some of the outcomes from that week. Laura?
Yes. So up front, we were very excited to see that it also worked, so to speak. And there was a couple of different ways that we wanted to make sure that we were assessing the program. So one is from, the data perspective, which is what you see in the chart and on the right there, the red representing some of their symptoms related to PTSD, anxiety, and depression when they came into the program. And then the gray bar representing the drop when they left the program. And we're continuing to follow up with people as well for the next year or so to see if they maintain those benefits as well. But we also wanted to make sure that we were, hearing from them outside of just the data perspective. We've also continued to keep in close touch with a lot of these people as well, and have continued to hear, which I'll talk about shortly, that they're still feeling the benefits that they got from the program. So this here represents the veterans, many who came in with a diagnosis of PTSD, anxiety, depression, and many or most of whom left again with a much lower, either a mild or a subthreshold diagnosis. We can go to the next slide. As you've heard, we invited people to bring a support person for the entire week that they were here. I've actually never done that in any of our intensive programming before. We've always had family programming, but never for the entire time they were here. So what was also really unique is we did individual therapy and group therapies, not only education like we've done in a lot of our other programs, but actual interventions for these family members, knowing that many of them were suffering as well from either intergenerational trauma or other trauma or anxiety that they might be dealing with in their own lives. So we were also excited to see similar results with the family members and the support people in terms of symptom reduction from when they started the program. And we can move to the next slide. So this data now is from about January or February or so. So we're due for another check-in with how everybody is doing. But from everyone that we did check in with, what was great is all of the people that we were able to connect with reporting that they are using these skills back at home, whether it's with family members, whether it's at work, whether it's just with themselves, when we all have these anxious thoughts that might start to come up. And the majority of them are also using the resources that we provided them as well, which was also very good to see. And this is some of the lead up into how we'll wrap up here, but some of the feedback that we got from people was 1 week was great. The data shows, right, that they really maintained or gained and then are maintaining some benefits. 1 week is very short also, right? When we say 1 week, that's really 5 treatment days. And so it's, on the one hand, that might be easier to take yourself out of work or home or family responsibilities for a week. On the other hand, that, it feels like you're leaving almost as soon as you started to maybe get comfortable. So that had us thinking through, how do we want to do this going forward? Do we want to think through what a 2-week version of this or somewhere in between might look like? So we got some feedback from the participants as well as our staff who worked that program, which has led us to kind of think through what the next iteration of this might look like. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over. Well, first I'll just give people maybe a moment to read this. These were two of the participants that came through our program in December. On the left there is somebody who was an Army veteran, part of the Nez Perce tribe. And on the right is his wife, who came through as a support person as well. So we've continued to keep in close touch with them. And I think we feel just as lucky that we were able to work with them.
If I may share a quick story, Laura, about Virginia's comment and our follow-up. So I was able to sit in on one of the follow-up interviews. And Virginia, I asked Virginia, I said, how's everything going so far? And she said, well, I had a little bit of stress when I returned home. And I said, oh no, we did something wrong. What happened? And she was able to tell me that she said what she kept doing when she got home was checking the mailbox every day. She said, I checked the mailbox for 30 days every day. And I said, you were looking for a bill, weren't you? And she said, yes. She goes, I've never not had one after any kind of treatment, any kind of, admissions to a hospital or anything like that. She goes, and I said, you'll never receive one from us. We take care of it on our end. There is invoicing happening, but it's all on our end. Home base takes care of it and everything internally. And so you'll never see that aspect. And she said, yeah, I realized that after 30 days, I quit checking. And so it was great. So thanks.
Okay. And you can go to the next slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Lewis to wrap us up.
We could have probably added maybe 5 or 6 more slides in terms of lessons learned, but we did want to represent kind of the spirit of our approach, which is one that really incorporates the elements of cultural humility. In that we knew going in that there would be mistakes that would be made, and it was on us to be able to hear it and to learn and to make new mistakes and not repeat the old ones. And so we've had a wonderful leadership that really allowed us to be able to develop and cultivate this type of approach to growing programs above and beyond what we've done here in presenting about the native programming. And Marcus and Jackie and others have been really wonderful resources to help us be able to shift kind of directions or to provide guidance when we do have errors that are made or blind spots. And one of the things that we find in an academic medical setting is that the term evidence-based is so often lauded in different communities that we go into that we're accustomed to using it as almost like a way of entering in and highlighting the importance of some of the treatments we have to offer. And in many ways, we're also adding to a history of injury and considering where that evidence is based on and how research often is a place where inequities take place. And so we've been able to kind of thoughtfully think about language and what it represents in different ways that you'll see here. Marcus described really beautifully that we are an alternative to many people in what they're accustomed to in terms of healing. And so where we can, we want to join traditional practices and not necessarily compete or kind of override. One of the challenges that we learned in the ICP 2-week model was about the importance of having agreements and partnerships with the VA that really help us with being able to access records, but also transitioning folks back into their different resources back home in the VA settings. And we learned critically how important this was for also Indian Health Services, but also for other 638s and urban Indian health programs that offer services back in different communities. And Laura described with the feedback that we're constantly in this tension of how much is too much, how long is too long, both in terms of the content, but also the number of days. And ultimately, no matter how many barriers we have, we realize that we're going to encounter other ones. And if you could advance to the next slide, please. So on this page, in terms of what we intend to do, we're going to have a second cohort, as Marcus alluded to, in really just a few short weeks, where we'll be making some improvements. We'll be extending the number of days so that there will be 8 clinical days of programming that'll be offered from June 16th through the 28th. And then later on in the year, we're hoping to be able to actually break down the additional barrier of having folks fly thousands of miles, for some the first time getting on a plane in decades to come to New England by actually going closer to them. And so we're looking at different options right now in the Southwest with a 638 that will allow us to be able to mobilize our staff who are all Massachusetts based, have licenses in Massachusetts, to be able to offer a condensed program then on site. And as we are embarking on that in 2025, we're hoping to actually increase the number of offerings, all the while making sure that we are consulting both locally, but also with some of the relationships we've developed already to ensure that we are not missing the mark in providing care that is effective, but also that sustains after we're gone. And then I think the next one is our last slide. So we are delighted to be able to answer questions much beyond today, and particularly if there's any in your communities that might be interested in any programs that we have to offer, we would greatly welcome the opportunity to continue this conversation.
Well, this is fabulous information. And just a reminder for folks that what's so fabulous about your work, not only your commitment to veterans, of course, but you veterans who are suffering from invisible wounds, emotional trauma, post-traumatic stress, and it's playing out in their behavior at home and interfering with maybe the way they're reacting to certain situations is causing problems in their family, with their friends, with their buddies, and they can come to this no-cost program, this intensive treatment, intensive clinical treatment, bring their support person, have a week of education about behavior and reactions, and practice different behaviors and reactions that are more positive. And their support person also receives the same information, and the practice element is what's so wonderful. And then they go home and they continue to practice, and they learn that checking their mailbox for a bill that's never going to come is wonderful. And the other thing is that you have the results show that it works, that an intensive program for, in this case, 1 week can work and change people's lives. And I just really applaud what you all have done. And I wanted to remind people that are on the call listening that if they weren't able to attend last month, you can go on the link and you can pull up the last month's presentation that Dr. Vorpal did that talked a little bit more about the actual inner workings of the program. So thank you all so much. I know we're getting a little short on time, so I'm going to transition over to Livia Davis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Livia Davis, and I consider myself a non-native in this native space, and that was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. And I just want to invite all of our listeners to offer any reflections that you have. I did have one private IM that came in around a question of replicating it. And I think, Louis, you started to get at that, but basically the question was around, are you thinking that this should be replicated, or do you think that we should encourage people to come to you?
So thank you, Livia, for that question. One thing that we want to make sure we do is that anything that we've learned that is effective, we want to make sure that we're sharing with others. And I think we want to, in this case, as we have so many bumps and bruises to continue to offer it a second time in June, our hope is that as we refine this model and understand what are some of the core elements that are meaningful and effective in a way that can span all the multitude of differences and tribal experiences and values, we do want to share that. And There are some ways in which our organization already provides some education and training in the areas that we have expertise in to make sure that other communities can identify service members, have some of the gold standard treatments for PTSD that we also offer available in their own communities. And so that is a way in which we can immediately provide support to scale this. For the exact programming that we've designed, we're still in a process of making sure that we're doing our due diligence, that this works effectively across all these different domains. So as soon as we have more information to share, we would certainly love to bring people in and see how we can scale this.
Thank you so much. There's one more question if we have time. Have you found it's helpful to introduce trauma work through psychoed before initiating trauma-focused therapy? Or do you finding support concurrent initiation?
So I'll take this, but Laura, feel free to jump in. So the model and approach that we use is one that is very much based on the clinician not being the expert. So it's not a surgical procedure in which a person of authority does treatment to the client, to the person who's receiving it. It's a very empowerment-based one where we have expertise about some things that we want to share. We also have gaps, and this is for any community that we work with, where we welcome people to bring in their own expertise. And the goal is then to be able to join together and collaboratively work on the past traumas that have not allowed a person to be able to live the life that they deserve. And so in that way, I think psychoed and helping people kind of learn about treatment approaches, the rationale for it, can be quite powerful. What we step away from is having one standard of folks have to kind of graduate from a 4-week seminar before they can go to the next step. Because what we also don't want to do is that if somebody hits the ground and is ready to heal, to feel connected again to those around them, then it would not be in our interest to want to delay their process of healing. So it can be kind of a mixed approach, but we're certainly in favor of empowering folks to be able to learn the process, the whys, before they engage in the work.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to our either Holly or Bernice. I'm not sure which one.
Sure. I was just going to say, Louis, that the psychoed part plays into our belief about brilliance, that Native people are brilliant. They often just lack information. Once you give the information, their brilliance kicks in and they say, aha, I see. Now I know how to move forward. So this is fabulous. And your commitment to veterans is just so emotionally touching, you know, what you all do. So thank you so much for this. I think that we just have a couple of ending slides and then we play our next closing video. So Bernice, do you want to do these last pieces here?
Sure. So if you have any follow-up questions, just reach out to myself, Bernice Jordan at bjordan@uset.org, or Holly we gave her email address up here as well, because a lot of people have questions after, and you can always reach out to her, and also to Lee Lockharty. Any of us will be happy to answer anything. Next slide. Our next session will be Tuesday, May 28th. That's actually my birthday. The 2024 series, National Bridge Overview, Bridging Emergency Care and Community Health. So we'll look forward to seeing you then, maybe me.
And let me just add one thing. This topic is really exciting. It started as the California Bridge Program that went national, and they work with emergency rooms and hospitals all across the country, including tribal hospitals. And they help they train the emergency room staff on how to start buprenorphine for opiate treatment in the emergency room instead of referring them out. And it's a really exciting program. So it's kind of a long title, but it's pretty cool. So tune in next month for sure.
Definitely. I wish we can have Dr. Brown on that call too, as he is one of the founders of getting that implemented and with that hand warm off. So next slide. I guess this is it. This is it, the end. Holly, I don't know if you want to say anything about this song, but we'll get ready to go ahead and play.
Sure. And you know that we always, for this particular series with Home Base, we begin and end with the honor song. So enjoy this song. Somebody has to click on it to make it play.
Deviani, do you mind dropping your share?
Our warriors, we bring hope for you. Our warriors, we bring hope for you. Yahweh, 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 Our warriors will wait, oh, for you. Our warriors will wait, oh, for you. Yahweh, 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 Our warriors will pray, oh, for you. Our warriors will pray, oh, for you. Yahweh, 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 Yahweh.
Well, you know how we always close. Remember your native brilliance. Have a great day. Have a great week. And rejoin us next month, same time, same place. Appreciate y'all being with us today. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.